Ooh, god damn, I'm sore. And not in the way that you think I probably am. Okay, you pervert. No, in a truly shocking M. Night Shyamalan turn of events, I work out now. I know you guys truly didn't believe in me. Candidly, I didn't believe in myself. But it got to a point where the pants were fitting a little different. You know, I was gravitating towards the drawstring. I know you've been dying to know this, but you know, my whole life I was always so skinny. Like, so much so that my parents had to supplement 3 meals a day with Ensure. I don't know if you are familiar with the high protein chocolate beverage Ensure, but we had to up the calories just because I was honestly too hot and they were pissed. And then whatever, I like got a great set of tits and, you know, evened out. And then I think that like second puberty hit post college, whatever the fuck that is, um, where your body just decides it's gonna revolt against you and I don't know, decide to go a little bit more horizontally than vertically. But then right around the time that, why am I saying this? Right around the time that happened, I got Graves' disease. Okay? And for those of you that don't know Graves' disease, it's this gorgeous thyroid autoimmune condition where your thyroid is it's hyperactive. So I lost like 20 pounds. And yeah, it was alarming. And yeah, I was sick, but I had a thigh gap and a big one at that. You know, my eye was bulging out of my head, but, you know, I looked good from the neck down, I would say. So then I like never really knew what my normal, air quote, normal weight is, you know? Because then I finally got that under control. And I was like getting a little too the other way. And it's been such a interesting journey. And you know what doesn't help? Sizing. No one, the companies, the clothing companies need to sit in a boardroom together and get aligned, okay, on what is a medium. What is a large? What is an extra small? Because you're telling me I'm a small sometimes, but then I'm an extra large in Zara? What do you think that's going to do to the psyche? So I think I just got to a point where I was like, okay, enough is enough. I've had too many doctors threaten osteoporosis, which I have this endocrinologist who every fucking time I see her, which granted is every 3 months, she unsolicitedly tells me I'm going to need a C-section. Didn't ask. Okay. Tells me I'm going to have all these issues getting pregnant. I'm going to have osteoporosis. And it just comes to a point where you're like, hey, shh. I promise I will keep you in the loop, babe, if I decide to get pregnant. But I am at least 5 years out, okay? Let's focus on the back flaps that are looking useful. And by useful, I mean the back flaps are, I would say, getting to a point where someone could, you know, hop on and go for a ride. You know, I did tan recently, and by tan, I mean I did go to a tanning bed. Sue me. And the way I was standing, you know, the skin under the back flaps didn't get tan. So, moral of the story is I am working out now twice a week. And I think I was always just so discouraged by exercise classes and just like exercise in general, because your girl has a metal spine. Okay, she had spinal fusion in 2008, and it's tale as old as time. I can't run, I can't twist. I just always felt like these classes made me feel disabled. And I was like, why am I crying at core power? Like that's a dark place I don't want to be in. And yeah, it's a dark room as well. It's also heated, and we need to talk about heated workout classes. You don't have to do that. I don't understand the draw. You know, we have created air conditioning. I feel like we've gone a bit too far with that. So, you know, I was a dancer my whole life, but that's kind of an LOL because I was always in intermediate dance. I was fine. You know, I had a lot of pizzazz. I knew how to draw in the crowd, but I could hit 2 pirouettes, you know. I could do the left splits, and that's about it. So I just always walked. And I think, you know, as I'm getting older, the bones, the muscles, the mental, it's not enough. It's not cutting the mustard. So I'm now doing weight training, which I truly never thought those words would ever come out of my mouth. And to be honest, I'm kind of enjoying it. Let me preface by saying the gentleman who usually teaches the class is a delight, okay? Irish man who plays music I can't stand, but he is pure love, okay? He gives me, what's the word? Modifications when there are certain things I can't do. The class is 45 to 50 minutes. You're in, you're out. But he's been out for a month. And the woman that has taken his place candidly does not deserve to have rights, really. Women shouldn't have rights at this point. Put me in the Handmaid's Tale costume and just throw me out in the world. But she yells the whole fucking class. And yeah, sometimes it's encouraging, but I'm like, hey, hey, we can keep it room tone. I don't need to be yelled at while I'm holding a plank. I'm already pushing myself to the limit. Also, we don't need more female on female crime, okay? You to me, and I'm nearly on the brink, me to you. So just let me grab my 5-pound weights. I know everyone else has their 15 pounds. Ugh. So hopefully by this summer, I will be unrecognizable, okay? I would like to have a dump truck ass. That might be asking for too much, but I also don't want to sell myself short. So stay tuned. But that is not why we are here today. This episode is a bit overdue. And let me preface by saying this is not safe for work. Okay. This episode is it's gonna be a journey. There are gonna be a lot of twists and turns. So if you have children in the car, turn it up. Max volume. Tell them to pay attention. If you're at work, disconnect the Bluetooth headphones and play it on speaker. Let the whole cubicle hear it. And I'm going to hit you with the headline. I went to a sex party. Uh-huh. Yes, I did. I went to a sex party, and not just any sex party, a 200-person sex party in a corporate building. like in a commercial building on a main road in Los Angeles. This wasn't a rinky-dink little in someone's apartment with like a crudité board and a soft cheese. This was the real deal. And I'm going to tell you every single detail because I feel like when people, when I've heard people talk about these parties, they're very elusive. They don't want to say too much. It's very secretive. But I showed up at this party as Diane Sawyer, okay? I came in with a plan to gather information and to speak it to the world. I will be keeping the name of the group private. I will give them that. I'm not trying to, spill that tea. But we're going to get right into it. So, how did we get here? An acquaintance at the time, now after this party, I would say we're blood sisters because you can only really connect after something like this. But she was an acquaintance at the time. She reached out and she let me know I don't know if hosting is the right word, but she has this event coming up. It's once a month and she's in the sex work space. Okay. And I thought, you know what? This is probably a show, like more of like a burlesque show. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of The Box in New York, but it's a club where they're just like fucked up performances all night where people shit on strawberries and beat each other with raw meat. And I thought, let me support her and just, be in the audience, be a silly goose. So, as the days are going along, she sends me the link to this event. I ask the guy that I'm seeing at the time if he wants to come with. Now, when I send him the link, he lets me know, A, this is a sex club, and B, he's a member? ? Hello? And I think I am just in an absolute headspace of saying yes to the dress. Not that I feel like I usually am, but something about it was like enticing. I think, the guy I was seeing at the time, we were in like a fun little headspace, and we said, let's go. Let's do it. So the date is approaching. And mind you, I have never been to a sex party, contrary to popular belief. Candidly, I'm not really into public sex, nor being watched. I think that's not really my MO. I would have sex with my boyfriend in a public restroom, in a private stall, but I kind of knew going into it. I didn't think this was my jam, but I was going in open-minded, as open as I could, okay? So the day is approaching. Shocker, the guy I was seeing falls off the face of the earth. We are since no longer seeing each other. And it was the morning of, and I was like, you know what? I am not going to let this man stop me from having this life experience. So my psycho ass decided to go A, alone, and B, dead sober. So because the tickets were sold out, yes, you have to buy a ticket. I had texted this friend and she was like, if you volunteer on my team, you can get a ticket for free. Again, here I go saying yes to something without knowing what does that even, what am I volunteering? I thought maybe I would like hold her tools the night of or something. No. I had to show up that day at 3 p.m. and literally help set up the entire party. I was like installing light fixtures, LOL, and like taping black light tape around like a spiral staircase. The whole thing was a fever dream, but honestly, I was happy I went beforehand because I got to see her. I met her incredible boyfriend, who was such a treat. And I think, I got to see how the sausage was made. Again, we're going in Diane Sawyer, okay? I am in the field. And it's one of those things, like, I got to see the place with the lights on, you know? Like, it kind of demystified it a little bit. So, cut to, I was told I have to be there at 8:30 p.m. I chose an outfit that I thought was quite risque. I was in a little black mini skirt, a black top, but I was wearing like a black bathing suit. This sounds awful. This sounds absolutely ratchet the way I'm describing it. But it was, the tits were out, not literally, but like they were in a triangle bikini essentially. When I tell you I was the most conservatively dressed person there, okay, I'm going too fast. I walk in, I get the ID check, whatever. I see everyone is in either lingerie, some people are fully topless from the jump, and it was packed, fully packed. I think it was 200 people. Now, if you were a newcomer, such as myself, they made you do an orientation. So I, along with probably 12 other people, had to sit on a gym mat and listen to a shirtless man talk about the different rooms. He did talk about consent, which I guess, you know, that's par for the course. We got to make sure everyone's comfortable. But that was humbling, sitting crisscross applesauce in a mini skirt, hunched over on like a, you know, a trifold gym mat among other adults. That was bizarre. So we wrapped up. A part of the orientation, you are given a necklace with a light on it. If you choose the pink light, it insinuates to the other attendees that you're down to play. Pink means play. Blue, on the other hand, signifies you're maybe more of a spectator. I think it was like B means buddy or something. Dark. Hated that. So I chose blue. Now, you're not married to the color, but I think I was like, you know what? I'm already overstimulated. We're going to start with blue. Now, my friend and her boyfriend took me under their wing the entire night. I will bear their children if they ask me. Truly could not be more grateful to them, you know, walking me through the rooms. Mind you, this place was 3 stories, okay? Again, it is in a corporate building. When you walk in, the main room is just a big open room. There are, I guess mattresses like around the edge of the room. There are couches, but wherever the mattresses are, there are kind of like thinly veiled curtains to cover them. You had to bring your own alcohol. I don't drink, so again, sober and alone. And then there's another upstairs room where it was kind of like the BDSM room. There were people getting whipped and flogged. There was like a huge cage where you could lock people in. There was like a cuddle room where no sex was allowed. And then there were also like a few Sybians throughout the party. A Sybian is basically like a fuck machine. So it's like looks like a big block, and there are a bunch of different attachments you can attach to the Sybian. And pretty quickly throughout the night, it's getting wet and wild, okay? You know, there's like, people are riding the Sybians, there are like a few people getting flogged. And then throughout the night, there are performances. So the first performance was, it was like a husband and a wife, and they were doing like a shibari performance. And people are just mingling. I could tell people knew each other from previous events. A lot of people wanted to touch my tits. I noticed most of the women were more ass gals. You know, I felt a bit of a commodity within the group, which was, you know, I felt like I was providing something. You could get face paint. again, everyone was very kind, very open, very welcoming. There were a lot of couples, some people that had been together for 20 years. And I would say the age range was anywhere from like 26 to honestly like 55. And you guessed it, everyone was white, or at least it felt like it. I would say 96% was Caucasian and the rest was a mix. Which, to my chagrin, I was just like, here we go. I just feel like white people are, okay, we're the worst. Anyway, the second show was around 11 p.m. Mind you, you can't really have your phone. So you lose track of time. What is time but a construct? And we're all sitting down for this show, and this kind of like spooky, eerie music comes on, okay? This man comes out in a full, blacked out, face-covered bodysuit. And then 3 women come out in crotchless lingerie. Next thing I know, there are like dildos suction cupped to like a bench, if you will. And, you know, some of the women are fucking the dildos, which honestly, here's the thing. There was no foreplay. I'm like, how did you just sat on it and that didn't hurt? Did you like slip a little lube in before? Felt unrealistic. But then there was like a double-sided dildo and 2 women were fucking the same dildo. And then the guy in the black mask was like squirting black light paint into the audience, which honestly got on me. And I was like, let's keep it to the talent. Will this come off? Will this come off my Princess Polly mini skirt? It did. It did. But I feel like by that point, after that show... Oh, he also like... There was like a woman against a... she was like tied up against some board. And he was like splattering paint all over her. It just... Oh my God. And then he took a drill, and he put a dildo on the other side of the drill and started like literally drilling these women with the dildos. I'm like, can't imagine that felt good. Feel like that would be a little rug burn-esque. Whatever, the crowd's going wild. You know, white people love that shit. And I feel like by that point, by that, you know, it was probably 11:30, that ended, and it started to thin out, okay? The main room started to feel a little sparse. There was a loft, and the loft was specifically for fornication. It was probably the smallest section of this whole gala, if you will. But within the loft, there is a dark room. As it sounds, there was no light in there, and it was a room filled with these fucking gym mats. Like the fold-out, 4-inch thick gym mats that you were probably sitting on as a child. And, you know, before you get to the dark room within the loft, there are definitely people fucking. But then once you get into the dark room, the only way I could describe it was biblical. I think if an evangelical Christian walked into this room, they would turn into dust. They would evaporate into thin air. There were no less than 40 people fucking in this room. Like mounds of people fucking in one room. There were threesomes happening. There were Clorox wipes, you know, amidst the party. Which I saw people using Clorox wipes after using the Sybian. And I couldn't help but think, if the next person got onto that and there was residual Clorox, ow. Ouch. Just singeing your innards. But safety first, so what can you do? But I have to admit, there was a smell in the dark room. There was a smell. And you guessed it, it wasn't a good smell. It was hot in there in the literal sense of the word, in the temperature sense. It was muggy. It was kind of rainforest cafe-esque. Honestly, the smell was kind of similar to a rainforest cafe, but just mixed in with a little more like open puss. So that was a bit alarming. I'm not gonna lie. The smell was pretty intense, but people seemed to be enjoying themselves. Now, here's what I'll say. I think you would think seeing other people have sex around you would be this incredibly erotic, hot, just kind of like raunchy thing to see. And for some, I'm sure it is. Listen, it was a 200-person party. Obviously, these people have found their community. I am not here to kink shame. By all means, find your kink, find your people. You have my blessing. The thing I will say is I was caught off guard at how not turned on I was by anything I was seeing. Because when you see a bunch of white men and their hairy assholes hunched over in missionary, rabbit fucking someone, it's not... it doesn't really tickle my fancy. It felt very scientific. Like I felt like I was watching... I mean, you wouldn't have watched this in 8th grade, but it just felt very clinical, felt very biology class, and I was like, can we have some big buff, I don't know, mixed something, not white, like rolling his hips into a woman with her ass propped with a nice, down feather pillow under her hips? That might be too specific, but it just felt... It just felt kind of for the male gaze, which, believe me, I know these women were enjoying themselves. Also, this goes without saying, this was a predominantly, if not completely straight event. There was like a little girl-on-girl action, but it was kind of for the male gaze, I would say. Now, what was shocking was, I was sitting up in the loft with my friend, and we were just gabbing. We're just chatting, catching up. And there's a woman getting fisted, no less than 6 inches away from my face. So that was intense, but she seemed to be enjoying herself. And that's really, all that matters. A very kind... maybe 5-foot man approached me and asked if he could touch me, and I politely declined. But, it wasn't for me. There was nothing wrong or bad about it. Everyone was safe. Again, everyone was so kind. I think if you have the chance to go to one, you absolutely should. I don't really know how, you can go about finding one of these in your area. I can assure you they are happening wherever you live. Even if you live in the middle of Nebraska, those people are freaky. But it was a hoot and a dang holler. I didn't smooch anyone. The clothes stayed on. To be honest, I think it was a blessing in disguise that I didn't go with the guy I was seeing, because I feel like I might have felt more pressure to engage. But trippy experience. I think when you see porn, it's very performative. And I think that can also not be as sexy, because you're like, we all know she's not enjoying it. But then this was almost the complete other side of the spectrum, where you're seeing literal fornication in the most human sense happening before your eyes. And also in a volume that is so intense. I mean, you would never, and maybe that was also what wasn't so, quote, sexy about it. I was like, can I know some backstory? You know, the tatted gentleman who I can only assume had an OnlyFans, like, where are you from? Do you have any allergies? You know, the kind lady who was getting fisted. Do you have family in the area? Do you have a favorite Indian restaurant nearby? Are you a fan of butter chicken? You know, like I think I needed some sort of information. It was very overwhelming, very overstimulating. But I will say it was great to see people in their element. You know, there were definitely some newcomers, obviously I was one of them, who you could tell were, you know, starting to get their sea legs. You know, it was exciting, it was new, it was shiny. And then there were kind of these like bitchy women, like kind of like, ooh, they would kind of walk around and they knew they were hot and they would just kind of like flaunt their shit. And I was like, you better work, period. In their matching lingerie. I was like, it was such an experiment. Again, so happy I went. Happy I went alone. If I can go alone to a sex party, if I can go alone and sober to a sex party in a Steve Madden heel and a Princess Polly miniskirt, you can do anything. Okay? If there is anything to take away from this, you are unstoppable. Don't let fear or embarrassment stop you from doing the thing you want to do. And maybe you do it and you realize, not for me. You know, maybe I would go to a different one. But again, I don't know what would need to be different or definitely some diversity. It felt very Silicon Valley tech, Vineyard Vine-esque. There was also a little bit of a there was a little bit of an energy of maybe some of these people were theater kids growing up and are kind of in a rebrand, which in ways I was also a theater, in a different way. But I know I'm talking shit, but I promise you, if anyone who did attend this party happens to come across this episode, thank you for bringing me in. Thank you for being so kind. Thank you to the gentleman. I think he was a gentleman who put glow-in-the-dark body paint on my titties. That was sensational. What an experience. Yeah. I mean, again, so happy I went. Don't need to be fucking in public. I think that is a kink I can check off my list. You know, get that sorted out. But maybe it's your kink. And maybe it's something that you haven't even discovered yet. So, again, I wish I had more ways to tell you how to find a sex party in your area, but God bless them. I gotta put my hair up. My clavicle is getting hot. Okay, now, in a similar vein, I have another update. You know, the sex party might have not been my thing, but I have discovered something that is. It fell into my lap. It was, right around the time of my birthday. Something happened when the clock struck midnight on New Year's. I became so profoundly in heat. If a breeze would have hit me in kind of like a crisscross, hot, cold, however wind is created, I would have come on the spot. And my libido is something that, comes in waves. I may go 8 months not wanting to be touched. And then I may go through, a good 6 weeks where I'm going to hump a doorknob if it's presented to me. So I entered the year definitely ready. Now, keep in mind, I also had sex one time last year, and I think I was kind of catching up. I was making up for lost time. So, I was seeing this guy who I told you I was going to go to a sex party with, whatever, and he just, was not cutting the mustard. He was starting to get aloof, and it was not feeling good emotionally. So we had to cut that off. But I decided to download Feeld. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Feeld, it is a godless app that is very sex positive. It's kind of like a dating profile app where you can put photos, you can put hidden photos, you put a little bio as to what you're looking for. Couples are on there that are looking for thirds. It is truly anything you can imagine is on this app. And you go to this app because it is very, for the most part, open and friendly. There's not a whole lot of shame because I think everyone is putting what they want out there. And it can be as benign. I think my profile said I'm in heat, but I want a forehead kiss. You know what I mean? Bend me over, but do it gently. I don't need the whips and the this and the 5, 6, 7, 8. But then you have people who want to get, fucked with a corn on the cob and have you turn it into popcorn inside of them. It can get pretty niche. But again, different strokes for different folks. So I download the app and, it's an incredibly overwhelming app, especially if you're a woman, because you're getting lots of likes. Again, that is not because I am particularly good looking. It's just the way that it's set up. And, a good amount of them are trolls under a bridge, and that's okay. Everyone is beautiful in God's eyes, but, you definitely have to sift through the options. So, I matched with this hot-ass Italian guy who just wanted to, look at my face while he was jerking off over FaceTime. Never spoke to him again. Wonderful. Matched with this French guy. I don't know why I was doing a European thing. Baby, I was getting stamps on the passport. But the French guy and I just made out. It was so whimsical and healing. But I noticed he wanted to be very dominant with me. And I've noticed this pattern in the past where I find that men want to dominate me. And I think it's because I have a very forward, some may say masculine at times, presence. And I think there's something hot about wanting to silence a woman. And I think for the longest time, I thought I should like that. Or, it's like tale as old as time. CEO woman gets fucked by, beta assistant and the role switching. And I think in certain instances, I would enjoy that. If there was trust and love and I felt like, okay, I can really relinquish this control, sure. But I just found I was like, I don't like this. If anything, it makes me feel more masculine because I'm then get on the defense. I'm like, who the fuck are you? This French guy, he was asking me what my favorite positions are, and he told me one of his is doggy, and I was like, I'm going to be honest, doggy kind of hurts me. Don't know what it is. And he's like, you can't tell a man you can't do doggy. Oh, but I just did. I just did. He's just like, shut the fuck up. Anyway, all of this to say, I go back on the app. Miss Goddess had her ear to the streets and decided to put a gentleman in front of me who was very hot. We match. We start talking. Mind you, I still haven't had sex on this app. It's just been like a silly la 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 whatever. This gentleman tells me he wants to try being submissive. You don't say. It felt so eerily clandestine, if you will, because I was like, all of these men want to be so dominant with me. Like, can I try, like, really being dominant? And then this gorgeous man decides he wants to, be submissive. So we have a discovery call, if you will, an intro call. And we just have a little FaceTime. He's normal. He's sweet. And I come to find out, he's never dipped his toe in the submissive world. And to be honest, I've never been a dom. I've never really leaned into that, which I think was kind of the best part about it. Was, yes, we could, play the part, but there wasn't a whole lot of expectation or pressure or whatever. So the days leading up to this were so unbelievably hot because they were all over text. I was so horny throughout the day that I had to like concentrate to pee. The text this man was sent, I beyond calling me ma'am, me telling him you're not allowed to come until I tell you, me telling him when you come over you're not allowed to stand when you pee, just because I wanted to, just to emasculate him a little. And it just was unlocking something so utterly feral in my brain. So now, we had some days to build the tension, and the night has finally arrived. This was a few months ago, okay? I went into it just being, I consulted a friend, and I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And she reminded me, she was like, the pleasure always goes back to you. Which, to all of my ladies out there, that is not historically, sorry to speak on all of our behalves, how sex has been for us. It's always, okay, make sure he comes, or even if it's, usually he comes before you and your pleasure is an afterthought. And it's just, there's been a lot of people pleasing. I will speak for myself in that sector of my life. Now, into my mid to late 20s, now 30s, that's not as much of the case anymore, but it's an old narrative that we're challenging, like he's going to be turned on by me getting turned on, which will then in turn it's this cycle, So I tell him to come over at 7:30. I get a knock on my door, 7:30 sharp. I am in a little, you guessed it, mini skirt and a little tank. I'm in some heels. I have 2 stairs in my apartment. Okay, 2. For the first time in the 2 years that I've lived in this home, as I'm going to answer the door, I eat shit down these 2 stairs. And you'd think because there's only 2, it wouldn't be drastic. No. I broke my heel. Like, literally, it snapped the fucking half. I had a gash on my shin. Did I blame it on my car accident the month prior? Absolutely. Also, it probably sounded like an elephant fucking fell in my place. And he is a stone's throw away from the scene of the crime. So I'm like, oh my God, the show must go on. I run into my bedroom. I rip my broken shoe off. I put a new pair of heels. That did not go with the outfit, but it didn't matter. Okay. I'm nearly bleeding down my leg. Could have gotten an Oscar from this performance. Okay, an EGOT, honestly. But I open the door, I say, welcome. Writhing in pain. So he comes in and he washes his hands. God bless. And I think in the beginning it was like a little giddy. We were like, we made out for like a little bit. It was like there was some levity. But then after the levity, I locked the fuck in, okay? Had him sit in the chair, tied his hands behind his back. We did a breathing exercise. Every time he exhaled, I either choked him, I grabbed his balls, I spit in his mouth. did the whole kit and caboodle. My friends were like, where did this come from? I'm like, from the inner portals of my brain. Okay? You know, I'm not going to get into the whole night, but it was revolutionary. Okay? He was so in character. I was so in character. And to be, dare I say, worshipped in that way, and to have my fake Prada heel in his back while he's in fetal position was so healing for generations dating back to the 1600s, where probably my great 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 aunt was burned at the stake for having a period. Like, it just was sensational. So we have a great night, and you know, the night ends just being normal, if I can say that. You know, we had chips on the couch and we're just listening to music, and you know, it ended on a very benign note. And then I get a text the next day from him basically saying, you know, because we had plans to see each other the next day, and he let me know he was feeling some emptiness from casual sex. I was his first field experience. And you know what? I took it at face value. I don't know if he felt some shame around it, if that was kind of his journey to go on, and, you know, we went our separate ways. Or so the fuck I thought. Okay? They always come back when you are minding your business. I am in Miami with one of my best friends, having the time of our lives. Look down on my phone, I see his name. This is probably 2 months after he told me he was empty, okay? And, you know, he tells me, I can't stop thinking about our night. Is it okay that I'm texting you? Blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I tell him, I'm like, if I'm being honest, I think I was just a little caught off guard by your text. I don't know if I did something to upset you or what have you. And he's like, no, it was the opposite. I want more, whatever. So we pick it back up. The texts are flowing, and they're getting intense. Buckle up for what I'm about to say. Come to find out, this gentleman tells me he wants me to peg him. No, you guys, he wants me to peg him. Now, when I received this text, it was jarring. Again, contrary to popular belief, I have never done anything of the sort. And again, not kink shaming. I think, in fact, we need to explore the straight man's butthole more. I think it is a missed opportunity. And you know, again, 2025, I am in such a silly ass headspace where I'm like, fuck it, let's do it. And I think with him, there was something kind of hot about it because he was like in the army, salute our fucking service, and like wanted to be dominated in the most dominating way. So I was like, tits out, let's do it. I'm game. The rule was he had to buy the strap-on. I refused to spend money on that. He sent me one while I was in the Say It With Me Centurion Lounge at the airport, okay, on my laptop that popped up, and it was hot pink with bows on it. That felt a little rude. I was like, what are we doing there, you think? So I'm gearing up. I'm preparing mentally, physically, spiritually. I was like, okay, this is happening. I'm about to peg this man. I'm about to enter his fudgy wudgy fudge cake. And candidly, I didn't know if I was even ready to do that, but I think I was in that. I was like, let me just jump in and we will find out when I'm in, which is a crazy way to approach that situation. So, you know, we had some scheduling conflicts when I got back from Miami. It was Passover, Baruch Hashem, that was an issue for him. I got food poisoning, it was, oh my God, horrendous. So finally, my bowels are stable. His God allows him to, get pegged. It is past Passover. And he texts me. He's like, are you free tonight? We had already talked about doing this at his. Candidly, I have white sheets. I cannot deal with any unwanted excrement on that. I think that would actually quite bum me out. And so the night has arrived. It was showtime once again. And I remember this day calling my friend and I was like, I am like not in the mood to do this. But again, I was like, I'm sure once I show up and we get in the headspace, maybe I'll be more open into doing this. So, I tell him, I was like, be ready for me at 8:30. Leave the door unlocked. I want you on your knees. Okay. Giving the full kit and caboodle. And, about an hour before my friend is over, we're getting ready, and he texts me, said, your place? And I was like, no, yours. Mind you, we had already talked about this. And I was like, do you have a unit number? Because I just had the address, but I didn't know if there was a unit number. He doesn't respond. Whatever. So I leave. I tell him I'm on the way. He doesn't respond to that text when I'm about 20 minutes away from where he lives. I pull up. I am in a fur coat and essentially underwear. Now, I'm in a part of town that I wouldn't say is savory or desirable, especially to be in a fur coat and no clothes. But again, the show must go on. And I realize there's like a gate to get into the building. And so I call him. You guessed it. No answer. I call that bitch ass again. No answer. I am truly floored at this point. I get back in the car. I FaceTime some friends. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Thinking maybe he had his phone down. You guys, to this day, I have not heard from him. I have not heard from the man who came back into my life, okay, who told me his fantasy that I was willing to partake in, who planned that night, who scheduled that night. Still have not heard from him. Fully got stood up. Oh my God. And again, there was genuinely a moment in my head where I was like, oh my God, this man slipped, fell, cracked his head. The police are going to go through his phone, read these texts. I'm going to end up on a Netflix documentary. This is going to ruin my career. Literally the security footage of me in a debriefing room having to explain why he chose the pink dildo with the leather bows on it. Euthanize me at that point. Take me out. Oh, so that was that. And you know what? I think Goddess was protecting me. Goddess said, this ain't it. I don't foresee an opportunity to peg in the near future. I don't know if I would take that opportunity, to be honest. I think he caught me at an opportune time where, pegging was a possibility. Never say never, but I think the thing to take away from this is try new things, be open. Don't just fall into patterns that you've told you're meant to do. If you're meant to be submissive, be a little submissive. Maybe you're a little bit of both. Ask your partner, try the thing you've always wanted. And if they make you feel weird about it, maybe that's not the person you're supposed to be with. Or maybe it's just, let's massage the conversation a little bit more. I don't think this man wanting to get pegged is bad or wrong. I think his shame around it is a problem. And the way he fucking handled it was incredibly rude and indecent. But nevertheless, she persisted. So, needless to say, I think 2025 has been completely silly to me. It has been a hoot and a holler. I've been having an absolute blast. I think turning 30, it's the most in my body I have ever felt. It's also the most beautiful I've felt. Excuse me. And I've looked the same since I was 13. But it's something coming from the inside. There is something that changed where I feel like I am moving through the world from just the most embodied place within me. And I think life is throwing me silly shit. I had a lot of years where I was white knuckling, babe. There was no pegging to be had. And now I am just giggling my way through. I don't know if this is tone deaf to say, given the state of the world. It's not looking good. Hasn't been looking good. I saw recently Trump's trying to give out a $5,000 bonus for people having kids to try to encourage more, to increase the population. Why are we doing that? We're overpopulated. We are at capacity. Also, $5,000. What is that what? But this whole idea that we need to have more kids. No, we don't. No, we don't. Babe, we are at capacity. Okay, the club holds 2,000. We are in the billions. Actually, how many are there? Trillions? Oh God, credibility out the window. And don't you feel that? Can't we all feel that? The overpopulation? Yeah, we've all been in rush hour. When was the last time you were on a plane and the seat next to you was available? When was the last time you also haven't heard a wet cough on a plane? We got to tighten up on that one, guys. But it's also, it's in more insidious ways. I was driving in West Hollywood recently, and there was a line outside of a Panera. A Panera. Okay? Now, I don't know if there was a screaming deal that day. I'm going to chalk it up to too many people on this planet. Not to mention, when I get Postmates, when I get Uber Eats, tell me why when I get the notification that they're on their way, it shows you the person's headshot, ? And the car they're in, and it'll be like, hey, Fred's in a Prius. He'll be there in 10 minutes. Tell me why Jessica is showing up in a Tesla. Do we not have enough Postmates accounts? Are we having to share accounts? And Fred wasn't in the car. Okay, these are two separate people. Again, we are at capacity. We don't need to push it. Also, can you imagine being brought into this world against your will? I mean, we all were. We all just showed up. Your parents came. Well, your dad did. Your mom certainly did not. And then you were born. You just showed up into this world. Guys, am I going to have kids? Well, if I do, apparently I'm going to need a C-section, so God damn. Anyway, I'm sure this episode will not age well. I'm sure I'll, have a lashing from someone, but just find some silliness where you can. Say yes to the dress. Go peg someone. And thank you, as always, for joining me on this little journey. I love you all so dang much. And again, if you know of a tall introvert who wants to fall in love with me, who maybe doesn't want to get pegged, or maybe does, who knows, let's not, put it off the table, send them my way. Okay, I love you. Goodbye.